I feel like my voice it informs my horn, and my horn informs my voice in some regards. I feel like uh, just singing is a natural way to improve ear training and intonation on the horn. You know, it just when you learn how to sing the pitch, then you're truly hearing it where it needs to be.
This episode contains adult language and adult humor.
Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults?
If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Jumaane Smith. Jumaane, well, he's kicking it old school. As the lead trumpet player for Michael Buble, Jumaane has toured the world, playing in sold-out concert halls and packed stadiums. His playing combines the lyricism of the old masters with some modern-day swagger. Jumaane can bring the heat with his horn, or he can make it sweet with his smooth vocals. Because no matter what he does, it's always about the music. So, pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin. All right, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang, and I'm joined by Mr. Jumaane Smith. Jumaane, pleasure to meet you, man.
Hey, it's great to meet you too. Yeah.
I guess I have seen you live at least once with Michael Buble.
Oh, wow.
Didn't know who you were at the time, and I just remember sitting there going, "Dang, who is that dude?" Yeah, you've had for a young cat. I mean, you've done some pretty cool stuff in your career. So let's just kind of. I think here's where I want to jump in. I want to jump in kind of like at the sort of current phase that you're in, with working with Michael. I mean, that is such a cool gig to be playing that kind of music in front of that many people. That's rare. I mean, there are a lot of guys that are playing in big venues, big stages, but it's like I interviewed Harry Kim, and Dan Fanero, and both of them, played all those years with Phil Collins. So yeah, you expect to be on a huge stage with an act like Phil Collins playing that kind of music. But with Buble, you're playing a lot of jazz standards and playing in front of tens of thousands of people. So I mean, what's that feeling like?
It's great. It's such an amazing feeling, and in some regards, it feels like I get to play a small role in like continuing the lineage of this music and the style. And I mean, Michael, he's just an amazing entertainer, and I feel like he could literally just like talk to people, just him and a mic, solo stand up almost, and just captivate his entire audience 100%. And so him just having that type of power as an entertainer, it doesn't really matter what style of music he does. And he a long time ago he said to me, like, if like, he loves jazz. I mean, he grew up on the music. His grandfather got him involved with it and everything. And he said to me a long time ago, he's like, yeah, well, imagine you have a dog that's sick and it won't take its medicine. So you got to put its medicine inside of some food that it'll eat happily in order for it to understand. So the medicine being like this music, keeping the Great American Songbook alive, and like the tradition, and expanding upon those songs and all of that. So I think it's a great metaphor for his thing that he does. I mean, he does a ton of different things. He's a great artist. I've been with him 17 years now, and it's just been a tremendous ride, and not to mention from a trumpet playing standpoint, it's kicked my ass all over the place. I mean, some of those lead parts are very challenging, and to be performing them night after night after night, all in a row. Usually we do like, 22, 24 songs a show. And basically 75% of them have some heat, some firepower. And so from a stamina standpoint, it's taught me a lot about endurance and just playing efficiently without injuring myself, and to the best, playing to the best of my abilities and sensing like what I need to do to get right, every
Yeah.
day. I mean, that's a challenge for me too. It's like, trying to figure out troubleshooting. That's like a lot of it when you're out, these runs that we'll do like 170, 180 shows in a world tour, over the course of a year and a half. So it's like things happen, and sometimes you just got to roll with it. And
Yeah.
so it's sometimes you just got to figure out where your chops are at for the day, and whatever that may be, you gotta say, all right, well, maybe I played too loud yesterday, so I need to start out real soft today, or maybe my tongue isn't working as quickly as I want, so maybe I gotta hit some extra articulations, or you know what I mean? But all within the balance of preparing and knowing that you only have so much in the tank for the gig at night. So it's like you got to be careful about making sure you get the rest, and it's a whole thing. It's like being a professional athlete.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, man, you have just in that opening little dialogue, there are like so many things I want to ask you about now. You just like opened up the door, dude. So this is going to be nuts.
All
Okay.
right. All
Uh,
right.
but here's the first one I want to talk to you about, because I think stamina, endurance, being, because look, man, I play with an events band, corporate band, and I do have to play a couple of Michael's charts, and yeah, you're right. There's some heat in it, and and I only got to play two of them, so I don't have to play the whole book all night long. So thank God for that. But when you're on gigs, particularly when you're playing in a larger venue, you're playing on a larger stage. Well, I'll just backtrack it. When you're playing in general, one of the biggest problems that we have as trumpet players is the fact that our sound projects forward. And
Mm,
so we don't really hear ourselves the way other people hear us, which tends to lead to us overblowing. So,
yeah.
when you're in a small venue, playing with a 10-piece band, that's one thing. When you're playing on a large stage, like an arena show with a larger band, that's got to be a completely different kind of situation. So how do you go about making sure that you're playing efficiently, that you can hear yourself properly, and that you're not shooting your wad the first night on a long stretch of gigs?
Yeah, well, that's really tough, especially as a lead player. There's a certain set of frequencies that you have to deal with, and we use inner monitors. And within those monitors, you're constantly fighting for your sound. With the frequency. You're fighting with the cymbals for the sound that I hear my intonation best at the high end of my sound, and the real trebly side. That's where I feel like I can lock in the frequencies with the ensemble best. And so playing lead, a lot of times I feel like I'm fighting with the cymbals, because I need to hear the ride cymbal. In jazz especially, it's not like the type of thing I can just, say, hey, give me kick drum and snare and I'll be fine, from the drums. But for the time, I need hi-hat and ride cymbal. And I think there's that element. So you gotta like you have to know something about mixing sound, basically, in order to get what you need to hear. And then you got your own like inner ear sound that you're getting from playing with the in ears. So it sounds like you got your fingers in your ear the whole time. So you have to sort of figure out how to finesse that and try to get it to the point where it feels natural. Like you don't want too much of your sound to where you feel like you don't have to play at all, but you don't want too little either where you're like overblowing. And so it's kind of like tricking your mind in a way. And then in addition to that, a long time ago, I had the pleasure of doing a gig with Harry Kim. It was a Quincy Jones band thing, and fortunately, I was fortunate enough to get hired for it, and Harry was on it, and I was like picking his brain. I was like, it was for Quincy Jones' 80th birthday party, yeah, and I was picking his brain because he's like one of my favorites too. It's just like so efficient and accurate, and just great trumpet player. And he said that he always plays by feel. And I was like, by feel, that's interesting. So as opposed to like listening to your sound, like play from the feel side of it. And that sort of changed my perspective on things in a lot of ways too, because when you start just approaching it from like, okay, how does this feel? Does this feel comfortable? Does this feel like it normally would feel, regardless of what I'm hearing? Then that like presents, that's like different, because as a trumpet player, we want to like troubleshoot whatever. Okay, I can't hear myself. So now the natural thing to do, I just need to play louder. But the trade-off is that when you play louder, then like you said, your endurance is shot real quick. And in addition to that, tone change, intonation, there's all these other things that are factored in that happen when you're not playing where you should be playing naturally within your natural resonance. And so I feel like, playing from a feel standpoint is very important, and combining that with, in a situation like this, where you're playing with the in-ears, trying to mix your sound in a way where you can hear yourself, is very important. Like for my mix, I'd like to spread everything out and, only keep a few people down the center that I am like trying to lock into. And for certain people within the ensemble, I have to have them lower or higher based on what my needs are for hearing them, Yeah. So if somebody's like listening to what I'm hearing on stage, it's going to sound completely different to what's being heard out front.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love, actually, and this gave me an idea. I want to do an entire episode that's devoted to the use of in-ears and stage monitors and, that sort of thing. And my friend Mike Chikowitz, Mike talked about it a little bit in one of the episodes that we did. But like for you, having people like you and Harry, I talked to Rashawn Ross a little bit about it. But yeah, people that are doing like the bigger venues, and as well as people doing smaller venues, to talk about how to approach hearing yourself on stage, whether it be in-ear or wedges. Mike gave some really good tips about which frequencies to tell your sound tech to, it's like, okay, I need a cut here, I need a boost here, sort of thing. But I think that's really important, especially because more and more of us are doing gigs where you're either relying on stage wedges or, if you're lucky enough to have a set of in-ears, but you still need to know how to get the most out of them. You can't just expect to solve the problem. So
it's taken me a lot of time to understand that I don't have to try to fill up each room with my natural sound too. You know what I mean? Like that's something that takes, it's like a mind trick almost, or you know what I mean? You have to trick your subconscious to not thinking, okay, it's a big space, so I have to be bigger, I have to be louder. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, and you do. I mean, you're switching around because you're playing. Thank God, Michael's back out on the road, so that's great. But you're also doing like your small band stuff.
Yeah.
So you're going from these big 100,000 seat auditoriums to a smaller intimate club, or maybe you're doing an outdoor, kind of festival. I know you got a couple dates coming up during the summer with that. So you've got to switch gears mentally, because the sound requirements in each of those is going to be a little bit different. And if you're always trying to like fill up the room, you're in a world of hurt when you roll into that big stadium.
Yeah. That's why I feel like playing from feel is really important. Yeah, Harry, he hooked me up with that tip for sure.
Harry, man, he's a wealth of knowledge. He's such a good dude too. So, and speaking of old school, I didn't call you old, Harry. Just but you are old. But Ed, you're wearing that Miles shirt, and and recently I ran across on your social media stuff, some transcriptions. You're doing some Clifford and some Lee, and all the old timers, the old guard. So it's very important for us to never lose sight of our traditions, and to hold on to that, and take that as our new our new base, and then build on it. So this is kind of like a two-part kind of discussion, I guess. Is like, first is like, who are some of the people that have influenced you the most as a trumpet player? And then number two is, what are you kind of trying to take from that, and what are you trying to add on to it?
Yeah, some of my biggest influences are, Miles. I love Miles's playing, Freddie Hubbard, Louis Armstrong, Clifford Brown. All the great jazz artists, Nat Adderley, Dizzy Gillespie. All of that stuff. That's some of my favorite stuff. And then lead players like Jerry Hay and Snooky Young. Those are probably my top two. Wayne Bergeron's great too. And I mean. Taking from them, I feel like there's so much that I've learned just from listening to them and transcribing them and trying to emulate them in their style. And it's an amazing lineage to try to absorb and hopefully be a small part of in some regard.
Yeah. Well, I know that you've definitely gotten into the vocal aspect of music as well. Yeah. And how has that impacted your approach to playing?
Oh, it's been really great, actually. I feel like it's added an element of lyricism to my trumpet playing that's really good. I feel like my voice informs my horn, and my horn informs my voice in some regards. I feel like just singing is a natural way to improve ear training and intonation on the horn. It just, when you learn how to sing the pitch, then you're truly hearing it where it needs to be. So that tone and just trying to play with an approach that is very melodic and like a vocalist would almost, it's it's been a tremendous addition to my repertoire.
Well, Peter Bond, I had him on the show not too long ago. And for those of you who don't know, Peter's a former player in the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, and he wrote a book called The Singing Trumpet, and that is like the foundation of his pedagogical approach is, don't think about blowing the horn, think about singing, and that's that the singing and talking is the working model of how we play, because so many of us are trying to do all these weird things to get the sound out, as opposed to just singing through the horn.
And think back to the subconscious level.
And when people talk about the different, like hearing the pitch before you play it, it's so funny, because if you're thinking about, I'm thinking about, okay, I got to play this, I got to hit this high A, and I'm thinking about the pitch, but still, because I'm thinking about the high A, I start tensing up, and start going through all these little mind games that we go through, as players, as opposed to if you're just going to sing the note, especially if you're just going to sing it like in the shower when nobody's around, you're going to hear the pitch, and it's going to have a much better chance of coming out. So yeah, I definitely agree with that model. Now for you though, what I find kind of really interesting is you've stumbled onto this, which I think is a really great approach, but also you're in that interesting position where you are working regularly with a phenomenal vocalist in Michael, and you spent a few years working with Harry Connick on Harry's show. Another one of the in terms of male vocalists, one of the great of our times. So are there any things that you picked up from working with either of these guys or any of the other great players, singers that you've worked with in your career, that has informed your approach to vocals that has then further influenced your approach to trumpet?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always studying, watching what they do and how they approach music, and it's yeah, they've definitely influenced me tremendously. Just watching them and trying to emulate and take from things that I hear them do and learn from them, and how they, develop their vocal or create peaks and valleys through a set and through a song, within their vocal ranges and everything. And or to years ago, I got to do the Grammys with Stevie Wonder, and we had like all this rehearsal time scheduled, and we got through the song that we were doing really quickly, and he just wanted to jam and stuff. And so then he would just spend time playing jazz standards and singing along to the lines that he was playing. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. It's like I'm sitting here in the band watching Stevie Wonder practice, Like there's so much to be learned just from being around people like that, and it's extraordinary. I'm really grateful for the experiences that I've had.
Yeah. I mean, Stevie's on a whole different level from anybody, I think. I mean, that man has so much talent. And I guess because I'm older, I was born in the very early 60s. So I kind of got to experience Stevie's career arc. And a lot of people nowadays, they really don't appreciate fully the impact he has had on music. I mean, not just R&B, but all genres of music. I mean, the guy is just one of a kind.
Absolutely, his songwriting too, was incredible. Yeah. I mean,
Oh man.
Yeah, he's like one of my, if what do they say, if you get stuck on a deserted island.
Yeah.
I mean, a Stevie Wonder CD, it would be a must.
Give me Talking Book, any day of the week, man.
Yeah,
that's some serious stuff. I mean, the writing, the playing, everything on it. So I'm all about that.
Mine is Inner Visions. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
that's right around the same time.
Yeah. That's
talking about.
yeah, that's the stuff right there. Now, wearing the Miles shirt, Miles, Miles was opinionated. Miles had his approach to things, and he was very clear cut, and he caught a lot of flack from people because of his approach a lot of times. I mean, particularly in relationship to the type of music that he played. And, so there are a lot of jazz purists out there. And, the minute and I feel like it's almost like the minute you become commercially successful, then you're no longer a true jazz musician. That's the way a lot of people feel. I mean, I don't feel that way, but it's like, oh man, if you're selling out arenas, then you're not a real jazz guy. So, you got nothing to say.
I
But
mean, I
so
can't fault commercial success at all. I think it's if you're lucky enough to have that happen, man, more power to you.
I mean, but I mean, how do you ever get any pushback from people, about, the fact that you're doing so much commercial work, or that you're enjoying commercial success and the stuff that you're a part of, as opposed to, you should just be, playing, avant-garde jazz in a basement somewhere for 3 people.
Oh man. Well, no, I wouldn't say that I really do, but then again, if there is that out there, they're probably not saying it to my face. Uh, but in addition to that, I used to play a lot of free jazz too. Many years ago, I was a part of Rashid Ali's band, and he was like a father to me. Rashid Ali, if you're not familiar with him, he was the last drummer in John Coltrane's band,
Mhm.
and so he was like a father to me. We used to play a lot of avant-garde jazz, and you know, it's it was an amazing experience. Um, yeah, but as far as pushback, I mean, yeah, there's always going to be people who appreciate what you do and people who don't care for what you do. I mean, that's why Baskin and Robbins has 31 flavors, because not everybody likes the same type of ice cream. So
Yeah.
it's just it is what it is. If you're lucky enough to have haters, then you're probably doing something right. If if people are paying that much attention to you, I don't know. I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, I'm with you on that, man. It's like if nobody is paying attention to you, then you're not going to get any flack from anybody. But as soon as you start doing something to push the envelope, or just to make a contribution, yeah, ego's going to get bruised through it. And unfortunately, that's the way we tend to react, especially on social media. It's like,
yeah. I also feel like the people who are innovators are the ones that push the envelope too, and they're the ones that are able to venture outside of the box. And a lot of times, especially in jazz, people who are now, after they've died, seemingly known as the greatest innovators of their time, and their legacy lives on. A lot of those people, from my understanding, weren't as beloved in their lifetime. I mean, some of them were, and some of them were cast as like outsiders too. And it's I guess it's just a part of the thing. If you want to be an innovative artist in some capacity, not everybody's gonna love what you're doing, most likely.
yeah, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. So, with your career, so far, I mean, you've done that gamut, man. Like you're talking, you've done free jazz, you've done commercial stuff, you've done TV, stage, all that sort of stuff. Um, you're a side man, you're a band leader. So, there's a whole lot of stuff going on there. So right now, uh, what's your favorite kind of venue to be in? Do you prefer being on those huge stages? Do you prefer being in an intimate setting? Do you prefer, the studio?
Man, it's hard. It's like I love doing all of them. I really enjoy doing the big stages with Michael too, and it's like that's incredible. That's an incredible feeling. You got thousands of people yelling and screaming, and the energy and the pressure's high and everything. It's a great feeling. Everything though. I mean, I love doing TV. I love doing recording. I love doing my own thing. In a lot of ways, it's a dream come true to be able to dip my toes in a variety of different waters and hopefully still be true to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've had this conversation with a number of people recently, that no matter, if you look at any gig and think about this as like the dream gig, there's always somebody who's got that gig that hates it. You know, it's like if you think that you want to be the principal of a major orchestra, there's some guy sitting in that principal chair going, oh, I can't wait to get out of this, or somebody in the studio that feels that way. But I think that it's so important to appreciate the process and appreciate the opportunities that we have, because man, if you get to, even if you're not playing full time, if you're going out and you're playing music, that should be something fun. That should be something that fills you with joy. If somebody wants to actually hear you blow air through that piece of tubing, or sing through it, as Peter would say, then that is something to be grateful for. And I think a lot of times we lose sight of that.
That's the way I feel about it too. Absolutely. I feel really fortunate for the career that I've had, so.
Yeah, well,
it's easy to lose sight of. Definitely, there's times when it's hard to remind yourself that this is your dream come true, or this is music is feeding your soul. But I mean, all we can do is try to associate ourselves with those types of environments that truly connect with us, and try to disassociate ourselves with the ones that don't connect with us as well. And there's I agree. There's a lot of people. There's people who might not be happy with the whatever gig it is they're doing, or whatever job it is that they have, and maybe as good as it is, maybe it's just not for them anymore. Maybe they should be moving on to something else, and maybe they would be happier doing that.
Yeah.
And but there's a lot of ways to have a career. There's a lot of ways to make money in music and outside of music. Maybe there's something else within music that they would gravitate more towards, or maybe thinking of that being what their music career is, and all that, like the pinnacle of what their music career would be. Maybe they would have more of a realization that they got a good thing going, and there's no need to not be grateful for what they have.
Yeah. Well, that gratitude is a big thing, man. That's a big thing in my books. That every opportunity you have, it may not be the one that you want, but it's the one you got. So you can either try to make the best of it, or you can complain about it. So I just always try to figure out a way to make the best of it. And then if I'm not happy with it, then I try to figure out how to make what I want to have happen, going forward. So
yeah.
Yeah, so,
I think a beautiful thing about where we're at this current moment in time is, if you're playing music, then most likely nobody's forcing you to do it, So
that's true, and that is
if you don't really want to be there, then maybe you shouldn't be there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think sometimes we're afraid to reinvent ourselves, and that's one of the things I did always love about Miles, as from a musician standpoint, is he was not afraid to reinvent his approach to music. I mean, it still was Miles. It was Miles from, well, I don't want to say it was Miles when he first kind of broke on the scene, because Miles was basically being, a clone of Dizzy back, when he first started. But when Miles found his voice,
yeah,
it was, whether it was his cool, or whether it was his electronic, or whether it was, the latter stages of his career, when he felt the need to make a move, he made a move.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many of us are afraid, because our lives do change.
Mm-hmm.
and when things change, we still want to hold on to the old stuff, and sometimes the old stuff doesn't serve us anymore, you
Yeah.
know.
But change is tough, you know. Change is hard. It's hard to come to terms with changing environment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's like I feel like that change isn't hard in and of itself. I mean, because stuff is always changing. You don't have to do anything, and things change. The hard part is our ability to reconcile ourselves with that change. And you know, it's like, you know, sailing. You know, are you going to go with the wind, or are you going to go try and go against it? So, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But so, like, as a player, I mean, you know, like you're doing. So if we take Michael's, you know, gig as the example, you know, you're playing lead. That's your book. But you also, you know, have to blow some solos and things like that. Then you have like your smaller things that you're doing, and you know, you're doing more of the jazz stuff and the vocal things, and then, like you say, you did free jazz stuff like that. So you've had all these different kind of hats. When did you kind of lock into the lead side of your playing?
That was pretty early on that I started playing lead. Maybe around, well, as long as I can remember, I was the guy playing the high notes, and then I started working on it and developing it more in high school and in college. You know, when I was in my teens and 20s, and then I saw it as an open opportunity because there wasn't a lot of other people doing that type of thing in my environment. So I saw it as a window of opportunity between the amount of natural ability that I had to play in the upper register versus some of my peers at that moment. Um, so yeah, I saw it as a chance to maybe find a niche for myself, a window of opportunity there. And I sort of ran with it and developed a real passion for doing it. But I don't think of myself as solely a lead player, though. Um, you know, for me, I love playing jazz and improvising and, you know, learning songs and doing all kinds of other stuff too. So I wouldn't say that's the only thing that I'm interested in doing as far as a trumpet player. Um, but it's definitely something that has served me well to be able to do. And I do my best to practice every day and practice things geared towards improving my abilities in that regard, as well as in others.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly a lot of lead players, a lot of, you know, names that you could pop off, but two of my favorite lead players of all time, actually three, because I actually mentioned all three of them: Snooky, Jerry Hay, and Wayne. Um, all three. The one thing that I love about them all is that I can listen to them just play scream and lead, and then I can listen to them play a solo, especially like Jerry and Wayne both. Their flugel solos are just, they're butter. And you know, and give Snooky a plunger mute, you know, and you know, he's gonna make you cry. And I think that having that uh the improv the mindset of the improviser in terms of phrasing, structure, harmonic concepts, and things like that, with the chops to play a lead book, I think you get a really unique player in that case, because it's not just, you know, power lead, it's super musical. And not that the other players aren't, you know, there are tons of lead players that I love and respect. But those three, just because you brought up those names, those are three people that I do admire a lot. And yeah, I never got a chance to meet Snooky, but I, you know, have Jerry and Wayne. and they were all influential on me. And now that I'm a little older and understand, a lot of it has to do with their melodic approach to playing the lead charts. So,
Yeah.
how do you feel that those things have influenced you in your lead playing?
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's a very important aspect in and it helps you be more musical and more musically informed. Uh, just having that wealth of knowledge. Yeah, it's no, you nailed it. I feel like it's extremely important. Um, I was fortunate enough to share the stage with Snooky a few times, and he wasn't playing lead at the time, but it was just great to be in his presence and to get to rap to him a bit. And he said the same thing to me. He said, being a soloist was like the thing that's really helped him find his voice as a lead player and to help him be that musical. So yeah.
Well, that's a little tip for you up and coming lead players. Definitely don't shy away from learning more about being a soloist, because that's not going to help you in the end.
Mhm.
So like from your perspective of like the current state of jazz, where do you kind of see things heading?
um I think there's a shift happening right now. uh it's more of like a split between the traditionalists and the progressive side, contemporary side of things. And I think a lot of it is centered around the rhythm section groove, the drums and I think that nowadays most people don't grow up listening to traditional jazz, and it's not something that we would hear on the radio as much. Uh, and so young people aren't as familiar with the jazz beat or the traditional sort of swing beat. And so I think that there's been a shift in that regard. A lot of people are playing more funk and R&B, church, modern church style rhythm section approach to playing in jazz, and it's working. People are connecting with younger audiences in that way. So I think I see that continuing to progress. Um, it's hard too. Like I still think that there's room for growth in the traditional side of things with the more traditional beat and everything. But I also feel like this music is about progression and pushing the boundaries and change and being a part of whatever time that you're in, whatever uh, whether it be like the 30s or the 40s or the 2000s or whatever. You gotta have some association in your music of of being relevant to that period of time. And so it's hard for me to see. I don't know. It's interesting because I feel like nowadays there's also like people that are just like swinging like crazy. There's some incredible younger musicians coming up, and great artists that are doing that. Um, and some of them are having some success, but I think a lot of it is the majority of what audiences are following right now is is outside of that swing realm.
Yeah, I mean, it's I, I guess the best way to, and I'm not saying this personally, but I'm just saying it feels like many people feel that that swing is dated. You know, that when you hear a swing rhythm, that it's kind of a dated rhythm and a dated sound. I don't feel that way. I love swing, but I think, like you're saying, you know, that when people aren't when they aren't steeped in that vocabulary, when it's not part of who they are at that very basic level, then it's I'll mix metaphors here. It's hard to fake the funk. You know, it's like, you know, if you haven't really been immersed in that sound, to try and reproduce it is, you know, it sounds forced. You
Oh
know,
yeah, absolutely. That as well. You know, if it's always strange to me when people try to do swing and they're not, you know, well versed in the art form. I mean, it's so obvious from the get-go.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so like you're saying, you know, like the modern rhythms. I mean, if that's the rhythm that's kind of in your head and in your body, then that seems to be the best way to at least, it's like your gateway into the world of jazz. You know, it's like, okay, I've got this rhythm and I've got this freedom, so now I can start expressing it, and then hopefully then, you know, start to go back and to listen to you know, the generations before, and pick up what they had done and see how it all fits together. Yeah, I think that's where you can really develop this breadth and depth of understanding of what jazz is.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, but I mean, it's even like, you know, going back, we were talking about, you know, talking and singing and things like that, and how influential you're playing. Um, Even if you look at the differences in the way we talk. So like, if you go back and you watch some videos of some movies of some of the older jazz cats, or, you know, like you're talking about hanging out with Snooki and people like that, and there was a rhythm to the way they talked, and that rhythm to the way they talk was very similar to the feeling of swing.
Mm.
You know, kind of like, yeah, man, you know, you kind of get that kind of that rhythmic vibe, as opposed to now. So if you take like hip hop and kind of the way that our vernacular has changed, particularly in the urban communities, you know, it's a little bit more, you know, this kind of, you know, almost like machine gun kind of vibe that goes on. So then that's going to be what you hear, and that's the way you're thinking, that's the way you're talking. So it only makes sense as what's going to come out of your horn.
Mm. That's an interesting observation. Yeah, I've never really thought about it that way, but yes, that makes sense as well. Yeah, I feel like so much of it is environmental and what you're what you're hearing on the streets, what you're hearing on the radio, what you grow up listening to, what your parents grow up listening to. You know, that influences uh, your ears and how open your ears are to different styles of music and different sounds and things.
Yeah. And you know, you were like talking about like your experiences, you know, having to, you know, getting to work with you know, people like Michael and Harry, but you also got a chance to work with, you know, probably one of the greatest trumpet players, the most influential trumpet players of our generation, which is Wynton.
Mm.
So you know, what kind of impact did he make on you? Like, you know, maybe what's like the one or two big things that you can look at and go, yeah, this was definitely, you know, a Wynton influence.
Oh well, Wynton, he's another person that I admire him so much, and you know I consider him to be a friend, and man, he's almost like fatherly to me as well in some regard. You know, like he's always looked out for me, and he told me when I was 18, I was fortunate enough, our high school jazz band got into the Essentially Ellington Festival, which is like one of the big jazz festivals in New York. And it was my first time going to New York. And when I got there, I met Wynton and he told me, he said, "Oh yeah, I heard your recording and you can play, you know, you should move to New York. You should move to New York." I was 18, and I was thinking like, man, this is like crazy. Wynton's telling me I should move to New York. I got to try to do it. I got to try to make it happen. And it just opened up my world of possibilities, and it opened up doors for me. Like, oh, is that something that I could actually be worthy of trying to make my dreams come true? Is that something that I should try to do? And so there was that influence. And then when I was in college, he was my private teacher as well. And just it was incredible. It was an incredible experience to get to learn from him, and to have him share with me some of his technical approaches to the horn, and just about music and about life and all of that type of stuff. And I'm just grateful that he took the time to to help me out, and to help me find my space. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Wynton, like I said, is definitely one of the most influential players of the past century in my book, because he really he's one of those guys that could really do it all, and not just kinda, but he will eat it up. And his just listening to him play the yeah, and a lot of people, I've heard people say they don't like Wynton because he's too clean.
Oh well, come on.
It's like, oh well, there's really no soul to what he does. I'm like, really? Are you really listening? But it's because he's got such tremendous technical facility.
Absolutely. To me, he's one of the greatest of all time, and he's definitely one of my favorites. And to have the opportunity to be around him has just been tremendous. His technical, he's just so his level of virtuosity is just incredible. But it's not an accident. He put in the work. He put in that time, and he spent those hours when all the other kids were out, hanging out and doing whatever, messing around, hanging with their friends. He was in the room studying, and so by the time he hit the scene, he was miles beyond what his peers were. And I also think that the influence of him being second generation professional musician in his family, that had to be a factor as well. He had his brothers were playing too. His brothers becoming professional musicians, and his father, he knew what it took to really be extraordinary, and he knew where to find the right things for his kids to practice, and he put in the time and had the work ethic to make it happen. And he's still continuing to put in the time and work hard. He's doing now with his Jazz at Lincoln Center company. And I mean, he's just, the amount of things that he's done is just tremendous. And his outreach, his educational outreach, it's just extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing you touched on there that I think is really important, and I just want to get your feedback on it, is, like you're saying that Wynton, when his peers were out partying, hanging, doing whatever, he's shedding.
Mhm.
So there's a payoff. There's a trade-off, I should say. There's a trade-off if you want the payoff, and you got to pay the price, and the price is in the practice. Now, granted, Wynton had a lot of things going on in his favor. He his like you say, his dad, professional musician, his family, all of the musically talented in New Orleans, which is a hotbed of jazz. But there are a lot of other people that were in that same or a very similar environment that didn't become Wynton.
Mhm.
He took what was around him and he made it work for him.
Mhm.
So now you came from a different environment, and you're building your career. So when you were younger, how did you manage to develop those skills that help you to become noticed by someone like Wynton? And if you're going to give a recommendation to an up and coming, young player of, what they will probably need to do to attain a similar level of proficiency, what would you suggest that they do, and kind of the mindset that you need to have to do that?
I feel like you got to be self-disciplined and you got to work hard, find a great teacher, find the best musicians in whatever area that you're in, find those people, ask them who are the best teachers or where they got their knowledge from. And, it might just be that they're great teachers as well, but they might have had a great teacher uh, that's local to your environment, and just put in the work, listen to what they have to say, and work hard and put in those hours because it takes a lot of hours. It takes a tremendous amount of hours. When I was young, there was a long stretch of time, years, where I was practicing 6, 7, 8 hours a day, just working on my craft. And that was necessary for me at the time. Now, do I know if I was practicing efficiently or not? Yes, I do know that I wasn't practicing as efficiently as I should have been, because at that point I didn't have uh, as many mentors that were trumpet specific as I probably could have gotten just from going out and um, finding those people in that environment. Um, but I was sort of on my own, on my own thing at that point. I mean, I had some teachers. I had some teachers when I was growing up that showed me some stuff, but I was sort of like, I just wanted to go it on my own more. And so I was trying a bunch of different stuff, and through trial and error, that got me somewhere. But if I feel like if I had really found that teacher and listened to what they had to say, that I probably could have grew a lot more efficiently than uh, what I was doing. But at the same time, I feel like it is important as an artist or as an aspiring artist to find your own voice and find your own sound. So a lot of it is trial and error, and finding what works for you and who you are, what defines you musically and artistically.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you on that. Um, do you have any aspirations of being, like doing more in terms of education?
Yeah, I do. I like teaching when the student is inspired and is working hard, and is really working at it. Then teaching's great. When it's just like babysitting and they don't really want to be there, I don't want to waste my time on it either, you know.
Word. I'm with you on that completely. So let me ask you, because I know just because of the level of success that you've had, I mean, this is our, getting to know each other, but still I can already read this. You are a lifelong learner. I know that if we had the same conversation or had another conversation in 20 years, you'd be talking about, your practice schedule and, what you're working on and things like that. So I, yeah, I know that you're always looking to improve yourself, and that you probably feel like there, every aspect of your playing, there's always room for improvement. I'm gonna take that as an assumption that, but we always do have some things that are much easier and enjoyable in the process, and some things that are a little harder and less enjoyable in the process. So in terms of your playing, what aspects have been like the easiest for you, and that you don't really have to work on that much to maintain a level, or to start making some improvement, and which areas are just like, dude, I just got to keep pounding this crap because I still not where I want to be.
It's really hard to say. I mean, early on, I definitely was able to play high notes quicker than some of my peers. Now, whether I was doing it right or not, that's another story, or efficiently. Um, but to this day, I still feel like it's something that I need to work on and address. Um, but I feel like it's also very important to make sure to focus on those things that might not be quite as strong as the things that are stronger in every aspect of your technique. And you know I think it's important.
Yeah. How do you structure your practice?
Ideally, on a most ideal way, I would like to practice for 3 hours in a day and do like hour increments, one in the earlier part of the day, one in the middle part of the day, and then one later in the day if it's just a practice day, and uh, do a variety of different things within those practice windows. Like in the morning, start with some flexibilities and long tones and things like that. And in the afternoon, maybe I'll do some velocity work and some tonguing. And then in the evening, work on some creative aspect, like improvising and uh, new music that I'm learning or something like that. I mean, that's ideal, but a lot of times life gets in the way of that, and you have to uh, plan accordingly or make adjustments. So um, sometimes it'll be that I only have an hour within the day, and I just try to hit as many different aspects of that as I can. Approaching technique, endurance, uh, tonguing, tone, production. Big picture stuff,
Yeah.
velocity, flexibility. Breath control, all of those types of things, and just trying to do exercises that are geared towards improving upon that.
Yeah, man, it's like, you didn't have to work, it would be a lot easier. Well, regardless, because yeah, you have got to, your work and somebody else's work will be completely different. If you're a dentist and you're playing trumpet on the weekends, then you've got to do your 8 hours, Monday through Friday, and then play on the weekends. But if you're a touring musician like yourself, I mean, you're going to have days where you've got a heavy hit that night, and you're on the road, you're on the bus or on the plane, and you don't have time to get into that solid routine. So I think it's really important to start to kind of have that dual approach. Like, it's like, if I've got all day to practice, here's how I'm going to approach it. And then if I don't have any time, this is my essentials. And and that's why I like talking to guys like you about that, because you've had to find something that's workable to not only maintain, but to kind of keep your level going up, and doing it in a minimal amount of time.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said from efficient practice and consistency. Because sometimes even if all you have is 20 minutes, it'll make a difference in the long run. Say if you're one of those people who has a day job, and then you have gigs on the weekend, but your days are just jammed. I mean, you're going to be better off spending 20 minutes a day. In my opinion, you'd be better off spending those 20 minutes a day to warm up and do those things to make the horn feel normal to you. And then you would be to wait 3 or 4 days and then put in an hour and then do the gigs at the weekend. You know what I mean? So I don't know. A lot of it has to do with finding what works for you.
Yeah, yeah. But I think the word that you have used quite a bit today, I think is the important thing, is the efficiency. Because you can practice 20 minutes, and I've talked to a lot of people that are high caliber players saying, what they can accomplish in a 20-minute period compared to what the average person accomplishes in a 2-hour period, because it's just super focused, it's super intentional, and it's well thought out of like, okay, if I do this, then I'm addressing I'm doing my long tones, I'm doing my getting my fingers going, I'm doing this and doing this, and everything is just kind of condensed and concentrated, but it's done in a way that when you get done, you have hit it all, and you're able to do it with 100% focus, as opposed to a lot of times when we have more time, then our mind starts to wander, and we get off track and things like that, and you still only spend like 10 minutes practicing, like really practicing, even though you had the horn in your hands for 2 hours.
Yeah, I think it's really important to also be aware, like self-aware of where you are on the horn, and being able to troubleshoot through those things. Once you get to a level that you feel comfortable, to be able to troubleshoot, well, hey, maybe today my tongue isn't moving as fast, so I should spend what little time I have focusing on that and prioritizing things that help you to maintain that level of consistency, and also prioritizing things that are important for whatever job you might have coming up.
Yeah, well, you heard it here, folks. So work on your home practice routines, and if you got a really good one, share it with us. I'm always looking for some good stuff here. So anyway, all right. So we've got a couple of regular segments that I need to get through on this episode before I can let you go. And this has been great, man. I could certainly talk to you a lot more about some of these concepts. And if I do get that episode together about stage monitoring and things like that, I'm definitely calling you up for that one, because I think that you'd be a great person to have on for that.
I would love to. It's such a unique environment doing that with Michael, because like I said, we're up there playing jazz, and it's a different thing trying to hear the sound of jazz versus something where you can focus on like the kick drum and the snare drum for time. So it's
Oh yeah. That's different ball game. All right, well, here we go with our first segment. Our first segment is called Sound Off, and it's brought to us by Michael Barkley and Barkley Microphones, and it's about your approach to sound. And let's just kind of keep with that idea of the dichotomy that you have in your career of large spaces and smaller spaces, playing lead, playing jazz. How do you go about your approach to sound and the adjustments that you need to make in each of those venues, and way people can think about maybe being able to adjust their sound depending on their environments?
Are you speaking about like tone, or are you talking about
tone and just the sound production process?
Okay, well, I think that there's different ways to approach getting overtones to ring, and in different environments, you want like if you're playing lead, you want a lot of overtones in your sound. You want it to be bright and brassy, but maybe not overly bright. There's like a certain sweet spot where like it's cutting through and you can hear it, but it's not making the people in the audience be like, you know. And I think that a lot can be found in doing long tones from soft to loud and back to soft throughout the range of the horn, and trying to focus on filling those different tone possibilities and frequencies, and hearing those frequencies come out. For me personally, I generally like to play the same setup for whatever it is I'm playing. But I mean, occasionally I'll switch off of it to do something else if it's. But generally speaking, I like to just have one setup and then try to manipulate things within my embouchure and my tongue level and everything to change the actual tone. Uh, and so that's sort of how I go about it. I think long tones are really important. I think if I'm going to be playing a lot of jazz and I want to have a warmer sound, then I'm going to do a lot of real soft long tones and try to get the biggest vibration of tone at the lowest volume that I can. I find that tends to warm up the sound. And then, if I want to have a lot of overtones in my sound, then I focus on doing those sort of stretching long tones where you're developing the dynamic from very quiet to very loud and back while trying to maintain the consistency of pitch and the feel down the center. And for lead, I think it's important to find your resonance, um, to find your resonance down the center of the horn, and getting those slots to really lock in. Because when you focus on feeling the slots and finding the center of the horn, uh, to me, it's much easier to get the overtones to ring properly.
All right, cool. I like it. All right. Our next segment is called Geared Up, and this is about gear, of course. It's brought to us by Venture Mouthpieces. Venture, where technology, design, and craftsmanship intersect. Use the code TrumpetGurus21 to get 10% off. So, if we talk about gear, this is not necessarily, what you play, but why you kind of play what you do. Why you've made some of your equipment choices, and particularly thinking for somebody that's listening and maybe considering needing to change their gear. What are some of the concepts you use in choosing the gear, and how that might help them in their search?
Well, I feel like finding high quality gear that makes your job easier is really important. Um, and there's different things that are better for certain aspects of playing than others. And I think it's really important to find something that you love and that really works for you. But I also feel like it's a slippery slope, and you could be going down a rabbit hole, and next thing you know, you got like 20 horns on a gig, and you're like, you play like one note on one, and then you switch to another to get a different sound, or it's tough. And then when you get lost in that, then you're not really finding the meat and bones of whatever instrument you're using. So me personally, I like to stay on something for a while. If I'm gonna test something out, it's gonna be like 6 months or a year, before I really know, like, okay, this is working for me or this isn't working for me. And then when I find something that feels good, I try to stay with it, because like I said before, the troubleshooting aspect is important. So if your gear is always fluctuating, then it's harder to troubleshoot, uh, because you don't have any like baseline foundation to understand where you're at with things.
Yeah.
Finding something that's sufficient for whatever job that you're doing is definitely important.
Now, are you more of a smaller setup guy or a larger setup guy?
I like the large bore horn, um, and I like more of an open feel in general. Well, it's hard. Like I used to play a large bore bench, but now I'm playing. I got this Yamaha that I got from a buddy of mine, Jean Caz. It's a Bergeron model Yamaha, but it's been modified with a Charlie Milk lead pipe and crook. And I love this horn for playing lead and for a variety of things. It's been really great for me. So yeah, that's a large bore with a. I play the Bergeron Studio GR mouthpiece as well, and that's sort of like a medium small cup. It's got a little bit more resistance and back back pressure through the blow of that. So it's kind of like a tighter mouthpiece with a large horn combo, and
Yeah.
that seems to work well for me for now.
Yeah, well, I'll check back with you in a few years and see where we're at. So yeah, it's always interesting to me because it's so personal, and there is no set in stone answer. But I just like to get people's opinion on it because you never know when you're going to pick up a little bit of a little nugget that you might be able to put in. But like so many guys I know that love to have that initial resistance kind of like really upfront, and then feel like that everything is kind of opening up, and then other people that want it really free and open, so then they feel that the resistance is further down the horn, so they're kind of pushing into the horn.
Mhm.
And it's really fascinating, and I'm just a geek that way. So
It's so true, and everything things are so personal. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, like your physiology, your size, your mouth, your neck, the way that the direction of your airflow, uh, the strength of your lungs, the strength of your abdomen, all of those types of things are factors in the your setup choices and what may or may not be a solid setup for you.
yeah. Well, and also, I mean, this kind of discussion I think helps people to get a vocabulary, uh, because you play a horn and it's like, well, I just don't like my horn, and it's like, well, what don't you like about it? So if you are looking to get a new horn or a new mouthpiece, I think the more to understand understand those things about how you might be able to adjust your setup. So okay, before you buy a new horn, maybe try checking the gap on your mouthpiece insertion. Maybe try changing the back bore on your mouthpiece. It's a heck of a lot cheaper than buying a new horn. So you could do some of these small things and then try and dial it in, and then you might have solved your problem.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
maybe it could be that your teeth shifted since you got your mouthpiece, and
Hmm.
now you need something a little bit different.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of things that
Yeah.
factor
But
in.
but one of the things you did say about like troubleshooting, I think I like it. I like that because you're saying that if you're trying to deal with issues in your playing, you're going to do your troubleshooting. So you want to keep your gear as consistent as possible through that process.
Yeah.
Uh, and there are a lot of people that when they have a problem, the first thing they do is they change their gear,
Hmm.
as opposed to trying to troubleshoot a mechanical issue, a physiological issue. So yeah, I don't know which one's the right or the wrong one, but I think that I like your approach of, okay, let's try and troubleshoot it first, and then
I think that's important. And since I've become more consistent in my approach to practicing, I feel like I've become more consistent in my trumpet playing. A lot of the stuff that I practice daily is very similar or the same exercises because I know what to expect from them. I know how they should impact my trumpet playing and the results. And a lot of that has come from trial and error and picking up things here and there and you know finding little tidbits that work for me or speaking to people about what they do, you know.
yeah, yeah. And like Harry said, it goes back to feel a lot of times too. That's like when you're doing it consistently, then you know how it should feel, you know how it should sound, and then you marry those two, and then that your feel becomes your barometer. So I dig it. All right, we have one final segment to get through, and this is one of my favorites out of the three. Out of my three favorite segments, this is one of my favorites. And this is the Robinson's Remedies Rapid Fire Round. It's brought to us by Robinson's Remedies, rapid relief for your sore and tired chops. It's a series of questions that kind of go all over the place. So Are you ready, bro?
I hope so.
All right, man. Let's see how fast you can respond to these questions. And here's your first one. Who's the biggest influence on your life that is not a trumpet player?
Probably my mother.
Okay. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book. I love Quincy Jones' autobiography.
That's good. Have you read his new one?
You know, I have it, and I've started. I've started it, but it takes me a while to get through a book.
Yeah, I did it on audiobooks and got through it in about a day and a half. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, it was good. All right. What's the worst movie you've ever seen?
Oh, the worst movie I've ever seen. I probably didn't watch too much of it. I don't know.
All right. All right. I don't want to waste your time. I got you. If you weren't a trumpet player, what would you want to be?
If I wasn't a trumpet player, I don't know what I would do. Maybe something in science. You know, maybe yeah.
Huh? What is your favorite drink?
My favorite drink is scotch. I like to drink scotch.
Are you a single malt or are you a blend?
I like the single malt. Yeah.
Uh,
The peatier, the better.
okay. We got you.
Like Lagavulin, Ardbeg. Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah. I just killed a bottle of Ardbeg not too long ago.
Oh man, have you checked out the Wee Beastie? Their 5-year.
I have not done the Wee Beastie.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
I'll have to give that.
Send us some bottles for this ad.
All right.
A toast.
Yeah, well, you know what? I would be all over that. All right. So next question. You are going to have a dinner party and you can invite any 3 living people, friends and family don't count, but any 3 living people and to come to this dinner party. Who would you want to have there?
I would like to have Obama. I would like to have. Boy, that's a tough question. Only 3?
Only 3.
Who else would I like to? I mean, I would like to have Quincy Jones there too, you know, and who else? Boy, I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough one. You got me on the spot here.
Yeah, see?
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody really awesome.
Okay, we'll see. That's someone really awesome. All right. Well, let's see if this part of the question is any easier for you. 3 additional chairs, any 3 people from history.
Okay. Probably Louis Armstrong, Miles Davis. Would like to hear what they have to say, and Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, see, that was a lot easier.
Yeah.
A lot easier. All right. Lacquer, plated, or raw?
It depends on the sound that I'm going for at the time. I like plated for. I like silver plated for overtones and stuff. But I like raw for warmth.
All right. What's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote is to worry about the valleys because the peaks will take care of themselves.
Okay. What's your greatest fear?
My greatest fear is fear.
Have nothing to fear but fear itself. You could be granted one superpower. What would it be?
To to live a very long time healthily.
Okay. What aspect of trumpet playing do you think is the most overrated?
The most overrated aspect of trumpet playing, I think, is is like really loud high notes.
All right. And what aspect do you think is the most underrated?
The most underrated would probably be flexibility.
All right. You can go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice about music. What would it be?
One piece of advice about music. I would say try to become as efficient as you can in your practice.
All right. And while you're there, you're going to give your younger self one piece of advice about life.
One piece of advice about life is don't fall for all the distractions.
All right. And a final question for you. What do you want your legacy to be?
Boy, that's a really tough one. I would like my legacy to be one that's positive, and I would like to leave feeling like I've helped people and I've left something that will stick around in a positive way, whether it be through music or just through influence in life.
All right. Well, that, my friend, is certainly something that we can all aspire to, just making a difference. So I certainly appreciate your time with me today, and you've made a difference for me. You gave me some great ideas, and
likewise.
I'm hoping that one day soon we'll be able to sit down with that bottle of Ardbeg and
yeah, let's do it.
And continue the conversation.
Yeah.
All right. And so Jumaane's got a lot of great stuff going on. So please check out the links in the show notes. Check out his website. There's links to all kinds of great stuff, his tour schedule, recordings, and all the other projects that he's involved with. So definitely keep your eye on this young man. He's got a lot of stuff going on, a lot to offer, and I'm sure a lot of great stuff to come up in the future. So stay tuned. So thank you very much for joining us for this episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang. As always, ask that you like, subscribe, share, send us a bottle of scotch, whatever you want to do, just to keep the show going. And, we appreciate you support live music. And as always, folks, peace and slide grease. We out. Thanks for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating deeper connections through our mutual love of music and the trumpet life. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. And also like and share this episode with a friend. We want to see the hang grow for show. Please support our sponsors and consider becoming a personal supporter of this podcast as well. Remember, for less than the price of a bottle of valve oil a month, you can keep this podcast moving smoothly. The Trumpet Gurus Hang is recorded at the Candy Factory, a co-working space and social club located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Jose Johnson is the executive producer. Post-production editing is by Mitch Bowers. Our opening theme song was composed and performed by Lexi Signor. And our closing theme music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. Incidental music is by Ethan Swayze and Jose Johnson. Graphic design by Ann Kirby of the Sweet Corps. The Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast is produced in collaboration with the So Good Lancaster Media Group.